evening. Actually, it doesn't feel like evening anymore. The light has changed so much in the last couple of weeks. So we're back to daytime schedule at 6 p.m., but everyone online is in their own time zone. But here it's quite sunny at 6 p.m. A very lovely day. So as you may have guessed, Venerable Chodron is still in Europe, teaching in Germany right now, I believe. And so we'll continue with the reviews of these chapters that we've been studying in Volume 4, Following in the Buddha's Footsteps. Tonight we're going to cover 4 sections: Tibetan Monastics and Institutions, Challenge for Western Monastics, Full Ordination for Women, and Advice for Monastics, with the little beautiful Joy of Monastic Discipline at the end. We won't cover all this, but we'll touch on some things, and I've recruited some assistants for tonight's talks. So this chair will be occupied by some other speakers as well. So that's what we'll do tonight. But we will start, as we always do, first by taking a few moments to just bring ourselves here in this space. We'll do our prayers and visualizations. I'll set a motivation, and then we'll go. And so remember to visualize in the space in front the golden form of Shakyamuni Buddha, surrounded by all the holy beings, the lineage teachers, and ourselves surrounded by sentient beings as far as we can imagine in every direction. Beings upon whom we depend for everything and always have. Without whose kindness we would be in a very bad state no matter where we are. And who share the common drive of basic sentient beings of wishing to be happy and to avoid any kind of pain or suffering. And for all of us ordinary beings, we also share the fact that we are overwhelmed by our karma, driven by our karma and afflictions, the afflictions that cause our karma. And so we share with the reality of meeting problems again and again. So even with a heart of compassion, even as we take refuge, just see us all under the beautiful guidance of the 3 jewels. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
May all sentient beings
have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger.
Tayata
Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye Soha. I think we're all familiar with the idea that we have a precious human life right now. Precious in that we are human, when there are a lot of alternatives. But more to the point, precious because as human beings we have had the amazing fortune, really, to meet the Buddha's teachings and to have the internal interest, the internal receptivity to what the Buddha taught. And as I was leading this meditation just a couple of days ago, I was so struck by thinking about what are the causes of a precious human life? Basically, first, to become human, the foundation is to live in good ethical conduct, to avoid the 10 non-virtuous actions particularly, and then to hold to whatever level of precepts we hold, to refine that ethical practice. An additional cause is to be practicing the 6 far-reaching attitudes, the 6 perfections. So practicing generosity, keeping good ethics, practicing fortitude in the face of anger, in the face of suffering, and the fortitude to practice the Dharma. Cultivating joyous effort, overcoming our laziness, developing concentration and wisdom. And the third cause is to make pure prayers for fortunate rebirth, for the opportunity to practice again and again and again. So on one hand, we can really marvel that we have created those causes in the past. And we can check to see that we're creating these causes for the future. Yet as we look around at the people around us, the people we live with, the people we care about, the activities in the world today, it's very touching in a way to think about how many people are creating these causes. How many people in our world today, human beings, are actively avoiding 10 non-virtues, actively practicing generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom, and thinking it all about a future life. I mean, not so many. So to think with, to really cultivate the awareness of how dependent we are on every living being whose kindness, without which we cannot do anything at all. And yet these kind beings are not even aware of the possibility of creating causes for a precious human life. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I think about that, then all that can arise is compassion. Like, wow, they don't have the conditions to even know this. And I can't do much to help them. Yet, I also have an extraordinary opportunity right now to cultivate these qualities that lead to a precious human life. I have unbelievable conditions to create the causes to be able to generate the qualities, to cultivate the qualities that actually can be of benefit to these beings. And the aim of Buddhahood is something I can understand to a limited extent and hold as a future possibility to motivate a wish to continue to create these causes for the benefit of others. So as we share the Dharma tonight and go further into this practice on monastic life, this section that we're reviewing, let's hold in mind both the privilege that we have here in this room, both the monastics and the lay practitioners, you are all precept holders. The privilege we have now, and the fortune that we have to generate a strong motivation to be able to cultivate this opportunity, to use it to its max, to make our lives meaningful in a profound way, in order to be of benefit to all living beings, so that someday, we will have all the qualities of a Buddha. And with impeccable skill, be able to guide all beings away from the ignorance and all the sufferings that arise from that. So set that as our motivation. a little bit staggering to think about, I think. How many people are actually actively living an ethical life? How do we even know what ethics were? You know, I thought I was a good person until I met the Dharma. Anybody else have that experience? I thought I was a good person. And then I've been, oh, look at that. Oh, I do that. Oh, my goodness. Oh, look. If you don't have the opportunity to actually be told and guided in what an ethical life is, we don't know. We're doing our best. I thought generosity was being the first person to buy a round of beer if you go to the bar, right? I mean, I'm a generous person. No. So anyway, it deepens my commitment to think about that. So here we are, this whole beautiful section, Sangha, the Monastic Community, Chapter 5. We're coming to the end of it. And this particular section toward the end is pretty anecdotal. It doesn't have, I mean, it has a lot of content, but it doesn't have a lot of like things to review so much. And so I've invited a lot of co-presenters tonight to help share some of their anecdotal experiences as well. But we'll start, we were starting on page 127 with His Holiness saying, the Pratimoksha precepts are to help us regulate actions of body, speech, and mind. And in doing so, they make us look at the mind that motivates our physical and verbal actions. So whatever level of precepts we hold, whether we're holding monastic precepts or any of the lay precepts, or even just internally holding those precepts, lay precepts, the Pratimoksha precepts guide how we speak, how we act. And they're grosser than the Bodhisattva precepts that become more subtle. They also have body and speech guidelines, but you can also break a Bodhisattva precept just mentally. And even more subtly, then we have the tantric precepts for those who hold them. But we can see, I think we can see just in our life practice of holding any of these precepts, that once we start trying to constrain the wild impulses of body and speech, the mind also starts to change. And how skillful that is. So it's a very powerful thing to hold these precepts. Whereas Holiness says keeping all the precepts meticulously is extremely difficult. Not all Tibetan monks are perfect and follow the precepts to the smallest detail, but I think monks in general keep the major precepts and so forth. So that's also true for us here at Sravasti Abbey. I don't know that any of us, maybe someone can, I don't have that vision to see that we keep them absolutely meticulously to the letter. And as Venerable Chodron tells us again and again, these are trainings. You know, it's not like we are, there's some terrible sin, because we're trying to train in these and we become overwhelmed with our afflictions and we don't keep them to the letter sometimes. However, the fact that we are training at all has a profound effect both on our minds and then on our effect in the world, and definitely, more importantly, in our future karma, the karma that will ripen in the future and in our journey. So he talks a little bit, he said, we should look to the people who practice well for inspiration and not dwell on those who fail to do so. If we can help them improve their conduct, that is good, but then if they transgress a root precept, then they are expelled from the Sangha. So Venerable Chodron talked about this in terms of how, for us, we should too dwell on the exemplary monastics. Like having a mind that looks at how people are keeping their precepts well, or how they are practicing well, rather than focusing on the things they don't do, can't do, won't do, or whatever our opinion is about that. We have a completely different mind about each other as monastics, And we have a completely different mind about the monastic community in general around the world. So that, I think, is really an important piece of advice. She says we do the same thing with a problem person. I mean, anybody here not have a habit of identifying the faults in other people? Yeah, I think it's pretty rare unless we've really, really trained in it. And that beautiful quote, I didn't bring it, but we have it on one of the bathroom mirrors in Gautami House. That's where His Holiness says it is so much more worthwhile to examine a single fault in ourself than it is to examine all the myriad faults of all these other people. He said we should practice a purer view. So, although this is not in the context really of our personal life, he's talking about how the Tibetan community practices the Dharma. But I think what he is doing and what Venerable Chodron, when she gave this talk, we're looking at is to remind us to model ourselves not on the negative actions of the people around us, but on the virtues that we see. Because it's very easy, it's so easy to say, well, they're not doing it, why should I? They're not keeping that precept, why should I? They're not showing up for that, why should I? But it has a negative effect then it's like domino effect. Oh, they're not, oh, I'm not going to, oh, they're not going to, oh, I'm not going to. Suddenly there's nobody in the room, right? So that's a danger that I think can infect any monastic community or any community in general, really. To spend so much time looking at the faults of others and kind of relating to that and getting angry about that and frustrated with that, when we're living in a community that that's kind of rarefied air, if you will, of an aspiration to actually perform, to live in a way that is really virtuous. So to support that in one another and rejoice in that in one another has a different effect on the mind and a different effect on the community life. So then he goes on to describe how monastics live in the Tibetan tradition. And he goes into a lot of detail about how the monasteries were run and so forth. And then he talks again about how the Tibetan community practices and keeps the precepts. So he says, some monastics in both the Dharmaguptaka and Mular Savastivada traditions do not eat in the afternoon. We're also Dharmaguptaka tradition. This is wonderful, and most Theravada monastics do this also, and they also go on alms round. This is also admirable. Due to the large percentage of the Tibetan population that is monastic, practical constraints prevent us from following some of these practices. Now that's an interesting view, because what he's setting up here is how the Tibetan tradition, monastic tradition, has lived in Old Tibet for centuries, I guess, that's different from the Dharmaguptaka lineage that we're following and the Theravadins, which are better known here. And for me, I found it very interesting to restudy this because it kind of shows how the model for Western monastics in the Tibetan tradition tend to follow. It was really clear after I read this again. So he says, prior to 1959, approximately 1/4 of the male population in Tibet were monks. In the Lhasa area, the monasteries were the size of small towns. Add these up, 12,000, that's 22,000 monastics, roughly, monks, in the city of Lhasa in 1959. 22,000. So on the one hand, 22,000 people going on alms round every day, very, very challenging. Right? Very, very challenging. And on the other hand, even inviting lay people, he says here, lay people brought food to the monastery, but hello, 22,000 people needing to get fed every single day. The other thought I had with this was, can you imagine 1/4 of the males in the United States being monastics. So 340 million, let's say half of 170 million men, a quarter of that is like 45 million. 45 million men. What would this country look like, feel like, act like if 45 million men alone were monastics? It's a comparison. It sort of gives you, in my mind, a tilt. Oh, that's why the Tibetan personality of generosity, the Tibetan personality of, I mean, it's not just that the Dharma was there forever, but the monastics were there for so long, infusing the society with Dharma minds, with Dharma values. What a beautiful thing to imagine. Anyway, that's why they didn't do an alms round. And it's also then why, given the large number of monks at these major Tibetan monasteries, it would have been impossible for local villagers to give alms on a daily basis. Although lay people brought donations of food to the monasteries, it was difficult to obtain the amount needed to feed so many monastics, and pots big enough to cook for thousands could not be found. Therefore, the monks prepared meals in their smaller group houses within their monastery. So they're clustered in these kamsans that are like little small kind of related to their community, where they come from, so that they have a bit of a family feel when they come to that monastery. And each of those has a home and a kitchen, and that's where they're cooking. So they're cooking for smaller groups of people. This necessitated buying and cooking their own food, and for that reason, they also handled money. So this idea of not buying food was not feasible. And then the precept that's held not to handle money was practically, in a practical sense, not possible for those people who were going out to buy the food for the kamsan. So that set up a situation whereby it was very normal in the Tibetan tradition for the monastics to buy food. Then further down he says, unlike Christian monasteries and Buddhist monasteries in other Asian countries where the monastery supplies robes, shoes, and bags and covers medical and travel expenses, Tibetan monks must supply these for themselves. So you remember when the Dharma drum nuns were here, they all had on the same robes, they all had on the same shoes, they all carried the same bags, they were all supplied by the monastery. Their health care was covered by the monastery. Everything was covered by the monastery. In the, I don't know about China, but in Taiwan, that's how the Chinese tradition holds that. Very, very different kind of situation than the Tibetan communities had. And so he says, since Tibetan monks have to supply these things for themselves, for this reason too, they use money. They usually receive donations from relatives or friends, or use the offerings distributed during large ceremonies and teachings. So if there's big pujas and stuff and people come along and give them envelopes, then they keep, and so they keep that money because it supports them. In some monasteries, breakfast is provided to all monks who attend the morning puja. And if you don't attend the morning puja, you don't get breakfast. And when benefactors sponsor pujas, they also often offer a meal to the assembly. Then he says, in India, the Tibetan Nuns Project has been able to provide food for the nuns enrolled in some nunneries. So that's the monks, right? Tibetan Nuns Project is now 35 years old, began to establish places for the nuns who were escaping Tibet in the 1980s-ish. And they now sponsor or support 7 nunneries in India, in the Tibetan tradition. Actually, one of those is in Nepal. 2 of them, Tibetan Nuns Project covers all expenses for all the nuns. They are cared for completely, fed, clothed, education, everything. The other 5, I don't think Tibetan Buddhist Nuns Project has maybe the resources to be able to support all the other 5 nunneries, but they provide food or provide helping with building projects, or they do all kinds of things to assist and support the education of the nuns. So that's a different model than the that they're trying to establish. And even though Tibetan Nuns Project does have a sponsor a nun program, I'm putting that in quotes, because you can sponsor a nun for $30 a month, but that nun actually doesn't personally receive the funds. That sponsorship goes to take care of all the people, all the nuns who are practicing with Tibetan, under the Tibetan Nuns Project nunneries, so that it is equally distributed. Whereas the monks, the monasteries in South India, are they still doing sponsor a monk programs? They are. We used to see a lot more of this a few years ago, where they really were here in the United States inviting people to sponsor a monk. And that monk directly got the funds from their sponsor. So it had a different kind of relationship with money, with the sponsorship itself, and kind of, I would think, with the mind of the monk, you know, because you've got this one sponsor that you have to, well, I don't know, relate with. Yeah. So I don't know how much that's still prevalent, but it was certainly here for a long time. So given that model, right, so this is where the Tibetan monastic community came from historically. Now, when the Western monastics who are ordaining in the Tibetan tradition, they too are not supported specifically. And those monasteries are not supported specifically. So there's different ways, different models than the one that we're familiar with here, where the Abbey very fortunately is supported well. And Venerable Chodron was very clear that we will not buy food. That was a thing that she wanted to adopt back from the Buddha's time. And we also hold the precept not to use money, although what we have is restrictions on how, but we're allowed to keep our personal money if we have that, but we have restrictions on how we can use those funds. So this is where I wanted to invite these, I think they're, yes, all nuns, who have lived in these different kind of circumstances, to share a little bit about their experience in living in a monastic environment different from the one that most of us only know, and how that has affected or affects how they practice now. So I'm going to start with Venerable Sepul, because would you mind coming up and being the sharer? I will get out of center stage and give you center stage. Do you have the question somewhere?
I appreciate the setup that you just created, or the context that you just created, because in no way in talking about my experience do I want to criticize or do anything but thank and appreciate the situations that I've had in other monasteries and Dharma centers. I was ordained in 2001 in Dharamsala, and I had been living there for a year before I ordained, and then I continued on another year, and I lived at a Dharma center. There were a number of monastics living there, and there was a senior nun who kind of looked after us, and we were required to attend morning pujas, morning practice and evening practice, and other than that, we were kind of free agents, which is not ideal for a new monastic, especially in a foreign country where there's lots of new things you want to explore and do. But luckily I'd had a role model, Venerable Chodron. We often, some of the older monastics joke that we didn't know Venerable was training us when we were taking teachings at DFF, but there were already deeper imprints in my mind about what a monastic did and didn't do. So I appreciate that. But this senior nun that was at this Dharma center would kind of corral the ones who maybe hadn't had such a strong role model. I paid for room and board before I ordained and after I ordained. That's just the way it worked there. There weren't any big benefactors. Although I think we had teachings freely offered after that, and of course we helped lead the meditations and do things like that. So I wish I had those questions.
So basically, it was, what was the outline there, general? How did the support for the four requisites
Oh, yeah.
show up?
So other than room and board, there weren't any requisites. You were expected to buy your own robes and anything that you needed. Yeah. And medicine was on your own as well. So food, clothing, medicine, and shelter. Yeah, they just, at that time, they couldn't afford to offer. There were a lot of monastics in and out of these Dharma centers, so there was no way they could, at that time, support everyone. So I was there about a year, and then I moved to another center under that affiliation in Australia. And it was a Dharma center, but it was also, there was a nunnery there as well. And so accommodation was offered for all the monastics. We had kind of like a separate area where we lived. And we really mostly, we were like individuals sharing land, sharing space. We were called a community, but community is loosely understood. And I think this is because a lot of the Geshis had this idea of just hands off. Let's see what the Westerners can do themselves. So they weren't really interested in pushing Westerners to toe the line any better than we did. I think because they saw that we were intellectually very bright, but also emotionally quite fragile, you know, in a lot of senses. So there was a lot of leeway there. The teachings were offered freely. The study program, we had a very good philosophical study program that was offered freely. We just had to pay for any printing of notes or transcripts, things like that. And when I was initially there were no meals offered. We paid for our own meals, and everyone had their own situation, either in a group house or an individual hut. We had little kutis kind of places where you would make your own meals. And then a few years into that, the center started offering us lunch in the cafe, which was very generous of them, given their financial situation. And the people were very supportive there, even though the nuns were more financially self-contained, I guess you'd say. What else?
Then what did you learn about being a monastic? How does that influence your practice now?
Well, as you were talking about that, you know, when you were creating the context, I think there's a way in some of those situations where you learn more by osmosis than by someone sitting down and telling you how it's done. Like I said, the Geshis really were more hands-off with the Westerners. And at the time, I thought I was living a very structured and ethical monastic life. And then I came here and went, oh, there's things I am not doing and don't know. And so I really appreciate this opportunity living at the Abbey, and just recently having gone back to Australia and seeing the situation there. It really hasn't changed much. A lot of the nuns are still living on their own. I don't know about monks, but the nuns are living in their own apartments and living on their own, and not getting the training that they need. Again, training can look so many different ways in different places. But what I appreciate about here is just, in comparison, seeing how my mind has changed since I've been here for 9 years. So, and very appreciative of that. Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask Venerable Pema to come up, who had a very different experience in not even being in a Western monastery, but in a Tibetan nunnery.
Oh, my paper.
So I had, after Vajrasattva retreat 2019, yes, I had gone to Laudo, and then after that gone to Kopan Nunnery to do Nune. So that was the plan, and I didn't. It was a very rough kind of. I'm going to do this, and that's it. So Laudo was fabulous, like mind blowing. Laudo is special. And we also got to see, okay, anyway, that's not the story. Okay, so she says I have 10 minutes. So in Kopan, I think my experience is quite unusual, because the first morning that I got there, we were queuing up, we were just waiting for breakfast. It's basically, you queue and you wait, and then you get your breakfast and you go. And then I saw an Indian nun that I met in Tushita in Dharamshala. And so I didn't know anybody in Kopan Nunnery, and then there was the phase that I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? And we didn't even talk much. And she was doing the water bowls. I was the only one in the Gompa doing my practice at 5 a.m. in the morning. So that was our. And it turned out that she was the shopkeeper. So she suddenly, immediately while we were queuing for breakfast, she decided that you have to go and learn Tibetan. I'm like, you are crazy. And there was no discussion. It was, okay, come to my shop because the shop opens at a certain time. And then she took her books and then pen and then ink, and I'm like, you are crazy. And then she proceeded to bring me to the kindergarten and talk to the kindergarten teacher and say, she's coming to your class. And then I found myself sitting at the back of the room in the kindergarten with nuns that starts from 6 years old. And the oldest was 16 years old, and I was old enough to be their grandmother. So that's how I started, and then every day I would go to class, and so my experience there is very different, because being in the and the thing is, I have learned later on that when people do this, you're actually supposed to go talk to the principal and say, can I join the class? So every day the principal was walking by, a Geshe monk, and he was like, every day he was looking, but like I didn't know that I had to go ask permission. Okay, so that was 4 months of doing this. Okay, then in terms of how the nunnery was structured, all the requisites were provided. Like, I had a friend who is from Singapore who wanted to ordain, and she was the Ken Rinpoche's student in Singapore. And she was teaching English there. So basically she got everything, so board, everything is free for her. And then she goes to class and she teaches English. And in Nepal, they have a regulation where you are required to, the nunnery is required to have secular classes up to a certain level. They need to do things like English, Nepali, math, and arts, and something like that, some basic secular education that's baked into their education program. So all the nuns got that. And then so every 2 weeks, we all go up to Kopan Monastery and do Sojong, which is prasada. And it was super fun because it's like a big gathering. Everybody is walking up the hill, and you all wait outside while the monks are doing their thing, and then you chit-chat, and you see people that you have not met for, so it was very fun. And then while I was there, in that period of time, they started their summer's retreat. So they have an interesting way of setting up territory, and I cannot understand what they're saying, but they were doing summer's retreat. And they were like, because they're near Boulder, so sometimes, like, I mean, if they can, whenever they can, the nuns all go and do Korah, even though it's a long hike to Boulder to do the circumambulation of the big stupa at Boulder, the one where the woman cut up the skin and did the circumference, that story. So, oh no, I have 10 minutes. So that's the big stupa that they go to. It's quite a walk, but they all go. Like they get, I think every 2 weeks they get 1 day off, a Sunday, and then I will see them on Sunday suddenly everybody swarm and cut grass, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Oh, it's holiday. We have to cut grass, then we can go out. So that's their holiday, and then another 2 weeks come, and I'm like, oh, are you on? Is it holiday? And like, yes, but somebody requested prayer, so we're all going to the bus and they're going to Swambu to do prayer the whole day. So basically, their holiday is gone. So I don't know, like, how did they do this? But and they're very busy. So the place I stay was away from them, but it's near to the little nuns' classroom, so it's very loud. At 5 a.m., they are memorizing. And from the time I was there, like in 3 months, they have managed to memorize the Manjushri prayer, Tara's prayer, and quite a few prayers. And this is little 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, zero education, starting from alphabet. And in 3 months, they all can memorize like at the top of their voice. So it's really quite amazing. In terms of monastic life, I think there's like 300-400 of them at that time. Like the little ones, my classmates, there is a lot of enthusiasm for, I want to be Geshe-ma. It's like incredible, the possibility. At that time, they had 2 Geshe-mas. So they've just graduated 2017. One is from Tibet and one is from Tum. So the one from Tibet, when I first went there, she wasn't there because I think she went to India with some nun who is sick. And the one in Tum was teaching already, and she was really nice. And then she has she has a sister who is a few years younger and like the smartest of the class. And then they have another little sister who is also like the smartest of the smart. And during the New was part of the 3-person who does all the ritual things. So like the whole family is there. And then you go up to Kopan and then you start to understand that, oh, that one's the uncle, and that one's the brother, and that one's the nephew. And it's like everybody's related. So it's amazing, like and the monks are so supportive of them. So when I went back in 2024, was it last? Yes, last year, the Geshe-ma from Tum is now the principal of Kopan. So the monks are incredibly they're still teaching, but they are incredibly supportive of the nuns, and the nunnery is so much I cannot say so much well run, but they are very efficient, and the discipline they hold is quite tight. And then I also got to see, I think, there was one that disrobed, and then she was coming back, and so there was a lot of flexibility. Like it's like such a big pot that people going in and out is not a big thing, doesn't do much, and that and during the Nune, so I was in the retreat house, and then there was this group of nuns that was preparing to do the Sen mandalas. So they were also trained to do the wholesome mandala themselves. And they were grinding stone, they don't have any equipment. Everything was by hand, they were pounding for many days before, and the whole Sen mandala is wiped out before the Nune, and they do it again. And And because the nun that was leading the project came to borrow a spoon from me, she asked me to go see the thing. So I went to see them doing thing, and then some senior nuns came and like, no, you're not allowed to do this. So they could lock the door. But I went there a few days and I took pictures and videos and yes. So there is this thing where they have structure, and then you know people, and then you get everywhere. So because they're my friends, then I can go to the bedroom, I can go anywhere, and then all the authority all look like, but nobody says anything to me. So it was really fun for me. Like my sense of my low tolerance for authority was thoroughly, because like nobody said anything, because it was just like, I felt like they are distant cousin, relative that, you just get invited there, and then the other people, the close one eye. So, and one of the Tibetan nuns told me that for the Tibetans, you don't have to make appointments. Like, they cannot understand why Westerners make appointment. You show up at their door, they knock at their door, they drop everything they do, and you are welcome. So that was a big lesson for me. Yeah. Yes, and then in terms of the training at the Abbey, that's the last question, right? Yeah. So I think what I saw there was, it was very positive in terms of like, there is so many monastics that is doing this, and the study program is going very well, and there are like, it's like each year. So first year I was there too, I think because of the COVID that was stopped, but subsequently, I think now they must have like, I don't know what's to guess, 30, 40 geshimas?
That nunnery alone?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think so. I could be wrong, but there's a lot. Like the next time the lot that came in was a big one.
Right.
And
Sarah, do you get what this is about? The Geshima thing? Okay, just make sure that everybody knows what we're doing.
so they have this like all these little girls, little nuns who really like, the study is so important, and not just the young ones, is even the old ones, even the older ones. Like somehow I found myself friends with this class of people who are going to graduate in 5 years' time, and I'm going to be invited to their graduation. So, but like this group, that some of them have real difficulty, like they are, you have really smart ones, and then in the class there are some people that struggles. Even the people who struggles wants to get Geshima. Like one was really sick and just cannot take exam, but still wants to get Geshima. Just that ability, just the ability, the opportunity to study. Yeah, and that it's and that they're teaching now. A lot of the Geshima, a lot of the nuns. So right from kindergarten is a nun that's teaching. Every class that's teaching, and of course maybe the top preparation is still by the monks, but all the way down is the nuns. Yeah, and then at the time, because I was also at Shechen Monastery's Tanka school, Shechen is also doing the summer's retreat. So Shechen is huge. Huh?
The Varsa.
Yes, the Varsha. So it's like just a lot of, I think if you want to judge like how strict they are to us and all that, then there's a lot of things that, but somehow they hold together because they have a way of they have a different layers of discipline that holds the whole thing together very loosely, but somehow it holds together. So it's I must say, and the monks are incredible. I tell the Kopan monks, and then of course Rinpoche loves the nuns so much that he comes down very often. So they're like blissed out. It's like, I never seen Rinpoche so much. Well, but in the nunnery he keeps coming. he will come and teach them, because whatever he teaches them, they listen and they practice. Yeah, so
Inspiring.
I know, it's like, oh,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Thank you, thank you. Helpful. So, Venerable Pelge, why don't we have you come next? Venerable Pelge also trained in a monastery. She was not a nun yet, but she was at a monastery in Taiwan for quite a while. So it's going to be a very different description, I imagine. Same questions though, right?
Yeah. Not so loosely, but very tightly. It's like same robes, everything is provided for, shoes are the same, haircut, you cut your hair all on the same day, same timing, you get up same timing, you go to bed same timing. There will be rounds checking on you, whether you are in bed, not in bed, how your bed is done, and then if it's not done, there will be certain so-called punishments, like you kneel during evening practice, very tight, eat same thing. Yeah, everybody basically do everything the same, like a cookie cutter. So yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, and what did you learn about monastic life there?
Precepts are held very tightly. Basically, it's more of like a no room for discussion kind of thing. You either do it or you don't do it. Yeah. Then the support there was a bit more difficult, whereby if you have something that's difficult, Asians don't basically talk about their feelings or their needs, or like we express ourselves, be transparent. It's totally different. It's like when you have difficulties, just go for the lam rim, go and look for your source in your text or whatever, and work your mind yourself. So that's how we were trained. So I think the difficulties when I come here is more like how to be transparent, what are my feelings, what are my needs. I don't know how to do them. I just go to my book as usual. So that's something that was very hard for me. And a lot of memorizing. Yeah, you just wake up and then the first thing you do is memorize, you study, you offer service, there is no break. Probably in the afternoon after lunch, you get a bit of rest time. And then after that, you just work until nighttime. Then, yeah, just break. And then the next day you start all over again. So, yeah. No flex days. No handling of money. No nothing. You don't get to call your parents every 10 days. Yeah, not much flexibility. It's just very routine, very scheduled. You don't have to think. There's nothing basically for you to think at all. It's just go. Yeah.
And how does, so what did you learn about monastic life? I mean, what did you come away from that? What did you carry away with you from that?
A lot of fortitude. I think one is fortitude. Second one is maybe a part of it is more like saying yes to everything, because everyone is like a cookie cutter. So it's like, oh, yes, we just do. So monastic life, precepts, having integrity, I think that's very important. And then also, yeah, having gratitude for the Abbey, because I remember when I first came, I just opened my bags waiting for Venerable Pende to check them, because that was what happened. Like, you're not supposed to bring things that are not allowed in the monastery. And she looks at me, I look at her like, are you checking my bag yet? And she's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I went into the room, she's like, oh, this is your room. And I'm like, huh, 3 in a room? I was expecting 20, because I slept with 20. We sweat together, we smell together, we make all sorts of noise together. So if you can't get me up in the middle of the night, that's why, because I'm kind of immune to it. And then, yeah, she just say, choose your bed. I'm like, huh, I even get to choose my bed? It's like, what do I do? Where's my sleeping bag? And then I just had, sleeping bag and sleep on straw mattress. So I think there's a lot of gratitude to the Abbey in terms of what we are provided here. We don't have computers, it's all hand and paper. Yeah, we don't have support, like if you have a mentor and a mentee kind of thing, we don't have those. We don't really share things like, oh, I'm very upset today and blah, 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 nothing. So that's something that's helpful in monastic life, I would say. And then I think ethical conduct, like how Venerable taught us, like precepts is a way of training instead of holding tightly and then getting myself wound up in, being too tight, don't know what to do, getting stuck. And then, I think Venerable has that flexibility for us. So I think that's helpful. Oh, 600 nuns at least. Yeah, so there's like 20 people in a room. We sleep on bunk beds. So if you want to use the washroom in the morning, please get up early. If not, no chance. Shower times, it was very difficult. We only had 10 minutes, and then within 10 minutes, the door will start knocking. People will knock at your door. It's like, hey, you need to be considerate for others, come out. Yeah. Then something that was nice was collaborative work. We don't have to talk much. We just cover each other. If not, all of us will be in trouble. I mean, if you don't get the things done, punishment. So the whole row of us were just new. So, yeah. Yes.
You said there was about 600 nuns, but you were still a layperson. Were you in Anagarika holding the 8 precepts? Or?
Holding the 8, but not the Anagarika. We were still in the gray outfit.
In a gray outfit?
Gray outfit.
That's kind of what we call Anagarika here,
yeah.
holding 8. And was there a lot of Anagarika?
Yes,
or
many,
people in 8?
Many, yeah, but mostly Taiwanese. So they also, only a handful from overseas. Like there's a quota that they can take in.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to go through many rounds of interviews.
But there was a lot of lay people there training to become monastics.
Yes, Anagarika, yes.
And your room was that's who you were housed with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there will be, like, first you have some forms to fill up, like our long application forms, and then you go through one round of interview with the monastics in Singapore, and then you fill out some more forms, you go to Taiwan, then you go through another interview, and then after a EML program that we had, then after the EML, we go through another form of interview with the 3 main nuns, the discipline kind of nuns, and then after that interview, then they will select from there, then you decide whether you want to stay or you don't want to stay, or can you stay or cannot stay. Yeah, so the bar is pretty high there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I'm going to have Venerable Rinchen come up, who was also a layperson. She didn't live in the community as a trainee. It obviously sparked some seeds, but she was teaching there, and so it's a slightly different perspective.
So for 5 years, from 2015 through 2019, I had the opportunity to go to South India and teach as part of the Emory Tibet Science Initiative. So for 5 summers, I taught physics to Buddhist monks, week and a half long program. And the nuns program started up a few years in. So for, I think, 3 summers, I taught the nuns. And yeah, I think that's right. 3 summers I taught the nuns. And then I also had the opportunity to go back associated with that program twice in December. So my experience was quite different because I was very much a layperson in a layperson's role, but surrounded by monastics. And so I was at Drepung Loseling all 5 years, which has a few thousand monks. And as a woman, I was, of course, not staying in like the main temple building. There were some guest rooms there, and so some of the, I think, male faculty did stay there, but there were other guest houses where I stayed at. And then my last 2 years there, they had built the Science and Meditation Center, so we were a little more off, separated by ourselves. But those first 3 years, we were actually like in the main prayer hall, kind of the way the Buddha hall has, you know, the main building and then, the main altar, and then there's these other side rooms. It's like teaching physics in the Posada room or something, but it was that sort of a thing. You know, so like walking up the stairs to my classroom, it's like the big doors would be open and the monks would be chanting, and then down that staircase we would drop balls and stuff. Try not to hit the abbot on the head. So it was interesting in that I went there that first year without really knowing anything about Buddhism, let alone Tibetan Buddhism or monasticism. But yes, it sparked something. Yes, sorry.
So why did you go?
Oh, because someone called me and is like, hey, do you want to go to India and teach physics to Tibetan monks? And I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. Really, another way to answer that is karma. But I did have the opportunity over those few years to see a little bit of what was going on in their life. And I also went, I never stayed the night or anything, but I went to Jangchab Choling, which is a nunnery over by Ganden, so kind of a little tuk-tuk ride away. And I saw a little bit of how life worked there. So at Drepung Loseling, our meals were separate. And I saw I think all 5 years, the same monk was the head cook in our separate kitchen where they made food for us, and we're trying to be very careful to keep things clean, I guess. And presumably we're making food they thought we would like. There were grilled cheese sandwiches for breakfast. And cake, I think, for breakfast as well. But we would go on tours, and so I saw these incredibly huge kitchens they had. Certainly not for everyone. Like, as I knew a little bit more, especially after coming to the Abbey and trying to ask more questions, often I couldn't get clear answers. So these huge kitchens where it's like bigger than a bathtub, I mean, some of that was for making tea, but there were also just huge amounts of vegetables. And I'm not actually sure if that was the kitchen just for one kansen or if it was for special occasions or what. Because they do host a lot of events there too. This is like, really thinking of it like a university makes the most sense. We were there at kind of an unusual time in that the summer program, this initiative to really bring science to the monks and nuns, was kind of this special standalone thing. And the monks we were teaching were the ones who were really in line to get the geshe nearing the end of their studies. So it was kind of like getting to teach, the graduate students in a way. So most of them were in their 30s. But, we would see the little kids, doing different things, but we were working with the people who are quite far along in their studies. The class that I taught typically had about 100 people in it. And how it worked was that the program kept evolving, but the idea was that there were cohorts. So the first year, you only had just one class, basically. But then the next year, that went on to the second year curriculum, and then a new cohort came in. So, at the end, it's like, okay, there were 5 or 6 simultaneous classes happening, each with about 100 monk students in it. And what was interesting was for the nuns, they were actually being pulled from many different monasteries or nunneries from all over India, and also from different traditions. So they weren't all just Gelug. And so it was like 2 or 3 representatives, and then they were all in one classroom, and there was just one cohort moving through. And I think there was 20 something of them, maybe 30. It was a much smaller group. What I saw, what really impressed me right away and really planted the seeds was just seeing how brilliant the monks were. And initially, because I was only interacting with the monks, and kind. I was teaching through a translator who was a Tibetan with a degree in physics, so really he could have just been teaching the class himself. But even with that language barrier, just the good qualities they had cultivated was very, very obvious. And then I had the chance to go and give like a talk to the nuns that first year, and same thing where it's just the questions they were asking were awesome, these great questions. And I was so happy that they could then go on and do some of this study. Really, really sharp minds. Like that study program that they go through pays off. It's difficult in that, now the younger monastics get a more kind of secular education. As Venerable Pema was mentioning, that idea of, okay, learn English, learn math. And it didn't used to be like that. And so some of the monks and nuns I was teaching had fled Tibet or come from the northern Himalayan regions, when they were already, 10 or 15 maybe. So some of them had had some schooling, some of them hadn't. They didn't necessarily know their multiplication tables, the monks. For the nuns, I mean, some of them had had quite a bit of math depending on what nunnery they came from, and others, like the concept of a decimal was brand new to them. So it was a bit challenging teaching physics when people can't necessarily do that level of math. But of course, what they want to know is quantum mechanics and relativity. So that was always a challenge. As I did it for more years, I started to pick up more. It was interesting in that, so again, I have about 100 monks in the classroom. Some of them in the front, super engaged. Some of them in the back, on their cell phone. It's like, just like a university class, because this was basically required if they're going through their Geshe studies, because on the Geshe exams, there are science questions now. And yeah, like it's actually part of the Geshe and the Geshe Ma exam. The Geshe Ma science test is harder. It's essay questions, and the Geshe test is multiple choice. Because there are so many more monks that's the only way they can grade it. Yes, much, anyways. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. So really, it was interesting seeing how they did very many different things. So beyond the monks I was teaching, it's like there are the monks who are working in the monastery cafe and the monastery store. There are the nuns who are literally building their new building by moving buckets of sand and dirt, just like we've been doing lately. And they're also doing their studies. But I also saw, like in one case, there was one nun tapped to basically lead the construction project. So, be our Venerable Tarpa and Venerable Thubten, and she couldn't do the science program anymore because of that. So it's interesting because that aspect was something that I kind of internalized and kind of brought with me here in a way. That idea that we don't all do the same thing, and you're often being pulled to serve in different roles. You don't. Even at a place like Drapa Moseling, you're not just studying for 30 years and then going out to be a teacher on your own. It's like there are people who are doing all of the nuts and bolts work as well. So yeah, I'll stop soon. But in terms of what I brought here with me, really seeing as a layperson what I witnessed in terms of monastic behavior. I knew nothing about the precepts, but I had some sense of where things were like, oh, there's a group of monks playing soccer. That idea of like, what's a good visualization? What's not a good visualization? And how safe I felt there. It's perhaps the safest I have ever felt anywhere, being surrounded by a bunch of men I didn't know. And so that's, again, that idea that as a monastic, I can make people feel safe. I have to cultivate that in myself. But I also saw the way that they were quite flexible and had more like space to themselves, maybe their own room, their own little stove in their room. And for me, I appreciate the structure of the Abbey, the boxes that were given, the guidelines that were given, because otherwise I would just hang out in my room and do my own thing, because I still have the same mind, hopefully slightly better than when I was a layperson. So I saw that, yeah, they had a lot more flexibility, I would say, than what we have.
Okay. Thank you all. So that gives a broader picture of where the Abbey sits with things. And where I was triggered, Venerable Jigme may have thoughts about this too, definitely, but, and Venerable, and when she was talking in this chapter, she was talking about how it was here, because as maybe Venerable Pema said, their structure, their discipline is built into these hundreds of people following the same guideline, going in the same direction. It's part of their family, it's part of their blood, it's also been there for 1,000 years or more. Right, they're working on a tradition, and even though you were practicing in the Tibetan tradition in Taiwan, that was kind of run more like a Taiwanese monastery, and there are some looser and tighter probably than the one you experienced. Here, as Venerable Chodron tells the story, she was one nun, a bunch of lay people, sitting around kind of wanting to drink tea and chat all afternoon. She was constantly having to just remind us, this is a monastery. This is a monastery. It looks like this nice little house over here, so you want to act like you're hanging out in somebody's house. But to say again and again and again, I don't know if Jigme, if the story comes to mind at all, please jump in, that's part of what we have, that she was trying to instill in us, and it's what we're still trying to instill in each other. So in some ways you may say it's kind of tight here, but what we don't have is any kind of history of what the alternative is. And in other ways, you know, depending on where you come from, I think that's definitely true for the Chinese nuns. They're very polite. Whoa, whoa. These people kind of are still training, still very much training. So the fragility, in a way, as I hear about the stories of people being in a tradition that's been practicing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. When the Tibetans came out of Tibet, that was a very, very challenging time, and yet His Holiness's move was one of the first things they do, is they keep the monasteries going. They establish that foundation for the whole structure of that society. Whereas Western monasteries, of which there are very, very few, are, you know, in a completely different cultural environment and trying to create something that carries forward the lineage, carries forward the history of what we have behind us without the cultural support in any of us. So there's this whole section here on challenges for Western monastics, where His Holiness says the situation for Western monastics is especially difficult because few monasteries are established in the West, so not here. And then while living in India, Western monastics, face visa, health, and language difficulties. Because they are comparatively new to Buddhism, Western monastic aspirants are not always aware of the behavior expected of people holding pratimoksha precepts. That sounds like an understatement to me. Western monastic aspirants are not always aware of the behavior expected of people holding pratimoksha precepts. Although they would like training in Vinaya, it is not always available to them in their own language. And Western monastics often end up living on their own or at Dharma centers where they work and receive room and board, just as we said. So as he goes on to say, and Venerable Chodron tells the story of how that kind of life-changing, monumental meeting of the teachers in 1993, I think, where Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo spoke to the difficulties for Western monastics, and Venerable Chodron also spoke, both the monks also spoke. His Holiness was so moved to hear the difficulties of people, as Jetsuma said, people come with tremendous aspiration and hope in their heart, and then they can't make it work. And eventually they just give up. And at that point, His Holiness wept. You can see it in the video. He just puts his hands and his face in his hands, touched by the difficulty and the challenges of people who aspire so much to be able to hold these precepts and carry us forward. And then he said and this is where Venerable Chodron got the kind of go-ahead. He said, Tibetan monastics who wish to train in India, the best solution is for Western monastics to begin monasteries and to develop their own training programs. And we Tibetans can help from our side. Monastics who wish to train in India can establish Western kamsins in the Tibetan monasteries, and that has happened. His Holiness goes on to say, and this is critical, to receive the 4 requisites, food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, monastics need the support of lay practitioners. Oh, excuse me. My hope is that lay followers will support Western monastics and reap the benefit of having Dharma practitioners who share their culture and language. So, for whatever karma has been created, Sravasti Abbey has been supported by lay supporters since day one. And I asked Tracy if she would come up as the lead person on providing food. We're all going to sit here and cry now. The lead person who's been providing food since October 2003, right? Right on. And how it is from the side of the layperson to support the monastic community.
You cry, I'll cry.
I'll try not to. I'll try not to.
I might cry anyway.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, one of the first things I wanted to say is that if the monastics didn't really know as much about monastic life, the lay community knew even less. We didn't know anything. Yeah, so there was funny times and probably bizarre times, and but when Venerable first started talking about starting the Abbey, she mentioned the vow that she felt was important to keep here with the community, and is that the lay practitioners would participate and provide food. And she talked about alms round, and it became pretty obvious that she would have to do some adaptations, or the community would, in different areas, but that she still wanted to stick to that one. Food would be provided by the lay practitioners. And so, yeah, it was, how do we do that, you know? So I thought of a time that we were even cooking and bringing it up, and one volunteer cooked a lot of spaghetti sauce with no garlic in it, because we're like reading all these labels, and then it occurred to me, I wonder if she actually got any spaghetti with that spaghetti sauce. I think she got some, but she might have had a lot of marinara soup or something for a while. So we weren't coordinated. We didn't really know what we were doing. But it just made sense to us that we were benefiting so much spiritually, and yes, we could donate and we could offer service, but donating until at that time, there weren't prayers surrounding offering service, and actually that's all evolved. It could still feel very transactional back then, because that's what you did. You went to a center, you gave some money, and you got advice, basically. This just had such a different feeling, like, and there's really no way to pay back spiritual care. Yeah, I mean, it's all the way to Buddhahood, right? It could take infinity for some of us to get there. And patiently, the teachers in the Sangha are thinking of your well-being and for all future lives. So it's just seems like such a small thing to be able to do to care for the physical needs of the Sangha. And I did have some notes. And as time went by, seeing the ethical conduct is just so inspiring. Watching Venerable for years, just no lies, no stealing, no cheating, and year after year, and it just starts to hit you that there's nothing more authentic you could participate in, period. And the cultivation of bodhicitta, that is a real aspiration, and it's daily. It's the practitioners up here are practicing 24/7. It's just mind-boggling, and I don't know how you could not want to support that. So offering food also it just has the feeling of a respectful way to support the Sangha. Food is just, it's very core to our being alive. And so every now and then, where there's a dish, there's that saying by the Buddha that to care for every living being as if they were your only child. And every now and then, it just feels like that altruistic love for the Sangha by offering food. I also wanted to mention that, as I'm shopping, I'm thinking, this is so good I'm shopping, because I used to just shop a lot. Purify, 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 Shop for virtue. Bargains for virtue, And food too, there's double duty, Purify food and craving, and so that's a good thing for me. And I do want to mention it's not just me. There's so many people who shop. In the end, I'm kind of a coordinator, a cat herder, and and cheerleader, and those people do a lot of shop. The other team members, and even though my offering to the Sangha is mundane and worldly, I know that their offering to me is infinite and vast. So it's I appreciate it, and this is my way of showing that. And it really, I wrote in here, ascendant beings. Sorry, it's a typo, but it's funny. Ascension beings, yeah. So I offer beans, and but don't cry. I sleep better knowing the Sangha is fed. Otherwise, I would worry about you. So I think many monastics or many lay people count on this team to make sure that you have that one need met, and that they feel more comfort and peace knowing that you're being cared for in that way. And especially in the beginning when the Singaporeans were just so supportive. And to start a monastery, most of them would never come to. And I would tell them, don't worry, we're taking care of your teacher. And they felt relieved, because they didn't get to, but they knew we were here doing that. So. Oh, the food fund. Yeah, so, and this is something that's so astounding. When we shop, people from all over the world contribute to that food fund, which we use on the food. And so it might be a lot of money from one individual. It might be, in some countries, a couple of dollars is a lot of money, and it's still coming here. And they're all really counting on us to use it wisely, to make sure the Sangha eats well and healthy, and that we don't miss a week. So, I am doing better. I don't check their cupboards anymore to make sure they have enough food. I've gotten confidence they will let us know, and we do ask them every week and pester them. So, that's.
Kelly, you want to add anything else? No?
Oh, you had something really sweet to say.
You wanted to say.
Can you remember it?
All right, but if you off camera, but Kelly has now moved here and is probably our newest regular, following it, not just a shopper, following in Tracy's footsteps.
No, what I was talking to Tracy about is that when I moved here, there were various opportunities to offer service, coming up here to work with the monastics on projects, or maybe do transcription at home or something. but offering food is one thing that only lay people can do. So it feels like sort of extra precious to be able to do that. And it also occurs to me how much trust you must have in lay practitioners. Oh, sorry, how much trust you must have in the laity to support you in that way.
Thank you for that. And the trust is actually in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. And we're all working from that place, right? Yeah. Yeah, Selden?
Sorry. I appreciate Tracy and all the lay people that like her that help the Abbey. If they didn't help, the Abbey wouldn't be here.
That's true. It's really true. And yet, you know, I mean, the demonstration of that is the interdependence of all of us, complete interdependence. It's not like anyone, I mean, even Venerable Chodron will not let herself be the center of the universe, the Abbey universe, right? It's, she said from day one, this monastery will grow dependent on the karma of the people who come, dependent on the talents and skills of the people who come. And that means the people who come to ordain and also the people who come to participate and be involved. So this network of how we all work and support one another. And I also, I mean, I appreciate so much the sharing from people tonight, because it also puts us in the context, again, of the Sangha of the 10 Directions. We're not some isolated little island of monastic life. I mean, there's not any 600 of us here. There's not any 400 of here. Although, when Khyentse Wangdik Rinpoche came to bless the land the first time in 2004, we drove him up the hill, I think, drove him up the hill, and he walked that land, and he had a stick, and he was poking it, and he said, Jeff translating? I'm not sure who was translating. I don't think Jeff was here. I don't think it was Jampa either. But anyway, he was, whoever it was, he was striking the ground, and they said, oh, he says, it's very fertile, very fertile. 10,000 monks could live here. 10,000 monastics, 10,000 monastics. This land could support 10,000 monastics. So that is a like day one aspiration for the someday future of Sravasti Abbey. Who knows? Who knows? But that also being a part of the Sangha, the 10 Directions, going all the way back to the Buddha. And because the Sangha is charged with preserving the Dharma, that is our job. That means we need to study it, we need to realize it, we need to carry it forward, we need to share it as much as we possibly can, and that's our job too. And so as long as the karma continues, for the Dharma to continue, that's the responsibility that all of us, the lay people and the monastics, have.
I think it was Venerable Steve that came with Geshe Tekchok.
May have been. No, not Geshe Tekchok. This is Geshe Wangdak.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Khyentse Wangdak.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe Jeff then, yeah. Anyhow, I'm just so amazed at how this was started and grew so quickly, given that all of us that came here knew nothing. You know, it's like, where's she going to get the monastics? That's what I always wondered. Where are they going to come? You know, is there a catalog you order? What? You know? I had no idea. And then when we got here and we're in Nanda House, you know, it was like, there's no furniture. Why is there no comfortable chairs here. What is that? So then we'd lay on the floor and she'd come in and she'd say, this is not a flop house. What are you doing? Get off the floor, This is a monastery. And so, day after day after day, training us.
Day after day after day.
And we knew nothing. And it was tight training, I will say.
It had to be.
It had to be. And yeah, it had to be. And so we knew it really in our bones after a while. Mm-hmm. And now when it can be a little lighter, that's hard for us that have been here so long to loosen, because you feel like it's all going to fall apart, because it felt that way at the beginning, like this isn't going to go, So it's interesting, the trajectory of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more in this chapter, and I had hoped that we would get to His Holiness's very beautiful advice for monastics, but we're not going to. We're not going to do it. But I wanted to add, so last week, Venerable Pema and I, at her leadership, she gets the credit for making this happen, but went to visit Geshe Gen Rinpoche, Geshe Topke, and Gala Rinpoche, and we had a private teaching that is on YouTube, although now I can't find it. It's on their Facebook page. I'm trying to get it for our YouTube channel too. But one of the questions that I had asked him, because I said some of our nuns have been practicing a long time now, we're kind of old. Do you have advice literally for preparing for death? Because that would be very helpful. So he did have some very helpful advice. But he also said, and I wanted to end with this, he said, you should also recognize that you at the Abbey are extremely fortunate, and you have such great fortune. Some of you are fully ordained nuns, bhikshunis, and someone who in this degenerate time is guarding that kind of ethical conduct is really incredible. The kind of virtue or merit that one is creating by doing that is something that is almost unimaginable. During the time of the Buddha, to hold such ethical conduct was beneficial, but not to the extent that it is now when we think about this degenerate era. It is said that to hold just one ethical commitment in this time, holding on to the teachings of the Buddha even just through one ethical commitment, is so much more powerful than holding a full ethical commitment during the time of a fortunate eon. So you should recognize just how powerful the virtue that you have accumulated is. So that includes everybody. It's not just the monastics, all the people who are engaged anywhere in the world, but of course, only people who are close associated with the Abbey are going to be watching this teaching. Anyone holding precept, holding that Buddhist, how does he call it? One bit of ethical conduct from the teachings of the Buddha is creating incredible merit during this degenerate time. So I think that's a very encouraging thing to hold within us as we continue forward with our monastic life and also with our relationship with our lay friends with whom we engage daily, except during the time when we're in a retreat, and then we're still engaging daily. It's not like we're separate entities. We are mutually supportive for the whole time. And how fortunate we really, really are with that. I also was reminded too, as I was reviewing this, and I think it's in the text, how Venerable Master Wuyen, when she was here, was teaching us the Vinaya. Speaking of people who don't get Vinaya training. I mean, Venerable Master Wuyen has come once, she's coming again. We had Venerable Hengqing come and teach us. We had Venerable Guoguang come and teach us. And when they're not here, Venerable Chodron is teaching us a Vinaya. We are having Vinaya teachings almost every year, plus our Vinaya class once a week. Also extremely rare. And Venerable Wuyen, in her teaching, she said, if the monastery is not serving society, there's no reason for people to support you. So it's the value of that service that we do in exchange for each other that also makes a big difference. And so not to lose sight of that, I think, in our, whatever our aspirations are for like our own private 10-year retreat or whatever, not to say that that's not a good thing to aspire for. I mean, Venerable Guoguang waited 30 years to get her 6-year retreat, serving the community and serving society. We need the merit. We need to generate the virtue that comes from that service. But we also need to be able to benefit the people who rely on the Abbey. So this is a beautiful, beautiful chapter. We'll go back to his, I don't know. We don't have it. I was going to say, let's read together. Does everybody have the text? No, you guys don't all have the text. Okay, never mind. I thought that you can chant it for us. What do you think? Yeah, I was just thinking we could recite it together aloud. I don't think we can do the chant, but do you have the lyrics you could put on the screen? Not lyrics, it's his poem. We can put the book text on the screen. That would be a very beautiful thing to end this with then. Because this is the voice of His Holiness, himself a monk. Just like the Buddha was a monk. Let's see. Almost there. 139. Yeah. So everyone read along, because he says at the very end of this, very end, he says, oh no, he doesn't, at the end of this other section, whether you are ordained or not, it would be beneficial to develop appreciation for the simplicity of a monastic life. Even if you are unable or do not want to be ordained in this life, appreciating the monastic way of life will leave an imprint so that you can be ordained in future lives. So if we recite this joy of monastic discipline together, then we're planting seeds, we're nourishing seeds, and so let's just do it. The joy of monastic discipline. How appropriate it is for those fortunate to follow you, the Buddha who taught great purity, to engage with minds of faith in pure conduct beyond reproach. Externally pure and also internally pure. This is the Buddha's tradition. It produces every temporary and ultimate benefit. How auspicious to meet with this medicine benefiting both self and others. This opportunity is found this once, is difficult to find again, and those who strive are so few. Make firm effort in your heart and apply yourself to pure conduct in 100 ways. Since, without a doubt, such a path can easily subdue the very coarse afflictions, why even mention freedom from the dukkha experienced in the householder's life? With discipline as the root, what cannot be produced from the great mighty tree of the Mahayana path, bodhicitta and the union of serenity and insight? The extremely swift, ultimate secret path, the magnificent and praiseworthy method to transform strong poison into medicine, the foundation of this too is ethical restraint. Ema, cherish this discipline, which is the cause of attaining swiftly the inseparable union of emptiness and compassion, the state of Vajradhara. Therefore, O friends with intelligence, do not disparage or hold as trivial the pratimoksha ethical conduct, which originates in the Sravaka scriptures. Discipline is praised as the basis and root of the doctrine. One should strive to maintain it carefully by study and analysis, with mindfulness and introspective awareness. Guard it respectfully with conscientiousness and integrity. Do not be lazy or indifferent, lest you snap the root of lasting happiness. I have spoken these words with a thought to benefit, lest the purpose be diminished. By the kindness of the great Father Manjughosha and my kind and qualified spiritual mentors, this monk from Amdo, Tenzin Gyatso, has written this with heartfelt respect for these practices. Forsaking eloquence and composition, it was composed in a plain and simple style. By any merits it may have, may all mother sentient beings in general, and especially many intelligent young people from the land of snows, engage in the practice of this path and touch the ground of supreme awakening. May all good fortunes increase. Okay, we know what our job is. We have work to do. Let's dedicate. I'll do it. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends. Fearless Supreme Spiritual Leader, Omniscient King of the Shakyas, Motherly Tara, Supreme Bestower of longevity and wisdom, vast ocean assembly of sources of refuge, grant propitiousness here and now for a nectar of benefit and bliss to flow. With a clear mind of extensive learning gained from following the wondrous traditions of Thubten, the able one's teachings, you bring clarity to masses of disciples with the light of Chodron, the lamp of the Dharma. May your lotus feet remain unfaltering for a very long time. Through your dharmic deeds of hearing, thinking, meditating, and so on, place those who seek the liberated path in harmony through immaculate discipline. Please lead all beings to liberation with undeclining excellent qualities of scripture and insight, and establish them in the glory of eternal bliss.
In the snowy mountain pure land,
We
you're the source of
we-
good and happiness.
Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma, done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and non-violent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the West flourish. Thank you. In my head, we had already done it.